This video we're going to discuss input channels. So let's go ahead and head over to the console and jump right in. On the left side of the console, you'll see that I have my center vocal selected. Right now on the screen, we can see a complete overview of the entire channel. Everything from the dynamics to the direct outs to the gain trim. We can just swap back and forth from the head amp, the phase status, EQ status, all the aux send details, and then below that we have boxes where we can actually highlight different areas of all the aux sends and the matrices easily like that. And then below that is the pan and master bus assignments. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the configuration window. We'll see here up at the top, it shows our input status. Right now it says that this channel is patched in on the 151 number 2 stage IO, okay, on channel 14. If we wanted to go ahead and make a change from here, if we click on the source button here, that's going to bring up the patching screen. But this is where I want the channel, so we don't need to make any changes in here. Next to that is a little icon that would indicate the tape return, meaning that we would get signal coming back. In my case, we would be bringing it back from the multi-track playback. So if we went ahead and selected that, you'll see that the head amp disappeared and now all of our signal is coming back from tape. So we'll go ahead and put that back. Below that is our link and our link options, okay? In some of the other videos I had discussed that we can link some channels together and that we have a way to actually choose the options that are going to be linked. In this case, let's bring that up. Right now, everything that's going to be linked, if I was to link these channels together, would be controlling the input channels, the direct outputs, the filters, the dynamics, the inserts, the EQ, bus sends, master routing, and delay. I checked off a lot of these boxes that are different than our global linking options that we had set in our preferences tab. So if I wanted to link the main vocal with the spare vocal, I can make all the controls to the channel, so in the event that the main vocal did go down and I swapped over, everything would be exactly the same with the exceptions of the fader, the mute, and the solo. So that way I can keep those controls independent, so I can bring down the main vocal fader and bring up the spare fader and unmute and solo if I need be. So let's close out of that and let's head over and actually link these two channels together. So now the channels are linked. So we have complete control over both channels by simply controlling all the parameters that are checked off in the linking options. Next, we have the direct output. As you see there, we have the knob that's indicating 0 dB. If you remember in an earlier video, I set all of the direct outputs to 0 dB globally across the entire console. All the level going out of the direct output is controlled via the head amp gain. So this way, whatever my input gain is going to be the same on the way out of the direct output. Below, we have a mode switch. Right now, the pickoff point for the direct out is right after the input. What that means is any of the gain that we set on the IO box is going to then be picked off immediately after that. If we go ahead and press that in, now we're going to get the direct output signal post-processing. So aside from the gain, we're also going to have any of the dynamics, any of the EQ, and that's going to go right then to our direct output. And then finally, we have the mute and fader option. So everything from the top down, from the head amp gain, the dynamics, the EQ, and any of the fader positions and mutes are going to be affected to the direct outputs. I would suggest if you're going to be doing multi-track recording, I would go ahead and leave this up right after the input. Below that, we have where the direct output is actually going to. If you remember when we set up, I have an AES-50 card that's capturing all of our recording. So right now, this channel is set to AES-50, card number 2, output 14. If we go ahead and click the destination button, once again, that's going to bring us into the patching screen, and we're going to be able to verify that that is, in fact, actually going to that AES-50 port. So let's go back in. Below that now, we have all the input channel safes. So this is going to basically take any parameter that we select from recall automation. So if we want, we can make sure that whenever we recall a scene, the EQ is not going to change, or the dynamic, the mute, so on and so forth. Below that, to the right, we have gain trim and the head amp indicators. The trim knob works independently from the gain below that. This way, if we wanted to make any trim adjustments and not have to affect any of the head amp gain, we can go ahead and do that. We have minus 40 dB or positive 20 dB of swing on the adjustment. To the left of that, we have the filter section. We have a high pass and a low pass filter. Currently, as you see, I do have them both engaged. And to bring those in and out, we have two buttons directly on the console that we can bring them in and out. Above that, we have two slope knobs. For the high pass filter, we have 12 dB per octave or 24 dB per octave. For the low pass, we have a 6 dB per octave and a 12 dB per octave. Next, we have the delay for the input channel. This is, again, this is not delay as in repeats like say on a vocal. This is the delay that we're going to add for how long it's going to take to get to the master fader. Below that is a processing order. Right now the console is set up that the dynamics, then the insert, then the EQ. If we go ahead and click on that, we could have the EQ before the insert and after the dynamics. I like to have it in the default setting. Next, we have the compressor section. Here you're going to find the 5 controls that you would normally expect to find on a compressor, such as the threshold, the ratio, the attack, release, and of course the makeup gain. But you'll see that we have an additional knob on the console. This is the presence control. Typically with a lot of compressors, sometimes when you compress hard or certain types of compressors, it might take away a bit of the top end. So what Midas did was we added a presence knob to kind of just inject some of that air back into the signal. Okay, also we see another button here just above our mode which says MOR, which actually stands for more. Basically the best way to explain that is this kind of just enhances the compressor a little bit more, so you could kind of hear it a little bit more aggressively if you want that kind of over compressed sound. So though it's definitely like a creative type of thing. Personally, I like it. It just kind of adds a bit of character and just kind of pulls the vocal a little bit more forward in the mix, as well as the other channels that I like to compress. It just kind of adds this bit of character to it. So I would definitely suggest, A-being that as you're doing your mixes. Below that, we have the mode knob. That's going to allow us to toggle through the 5 different types of compressors that we have. I personally like the adaptive type of compressor, which is a little bit more aggressive sounding. We have a creative compressor, a vintage style compressor, and a shimmer compressor, as well as the corrective compressor. Okay, the one beautiful thing about being able to toggle through these, all of your time constants can remain the same, and as you toggle through all of them during the performance, you can actually hear what each of the characteristics of the different compressor types are like, and choose the one that you feel is best for what you need. Now below that, we have the sidechain filter. Okay, you see that we have an in button that'll take it in and out of circuit. Okay, below that we have a width control. So that allows us to sweep around the frequency and choose the different type of width to actually have the compressor react to certain kinds of frequencies. Okay, if we go ahead and click on the menu button, that's going to bring up again the patching screen to allow us to actually key in into the sidechain compressor and be able to control things like, for example, you could have a kick drum, bringing down a bass guitar. So every time the kick drum hits, the bass, kind of compresses down and ducks it out of the way. So let's head on back. And then lastly, we have the listen button. This allows us to listen to exactly what's going on in the filter, so that way we can hone in and dial in the filter exactly where we need it to be to work with the compressor. And let's just step back up to the compressor main controls. We have a knee button on the console, and this allows us to toggle through 3 different styles of knees on the compressor. Now below that, once we actually have signal running through the console, we can go ahead and see all of our gain reduction. Let me go ahead and get us some signal into the console so I can demonstrate that for you. And here we go. So let me go ahead and just bring down the compressor, and as you can see, the compressor is working nicely, and we can see all of our gain reduction that way. And there you have it, is the compressor section. Next, we have the gate section. I switched channels to the snare top, so this way we can show exactly what's going on here with the gate. Once again, as you would expect to find, the gate is giving you all of the time constants that you would expect to find on the gate, the threshold, the release, the attack, the range, and the hold. Again, this is not a mixing class, so you should already understand how the gate is functioning. Okay, then we have a mode knob. This is then going to bring us into the transient gate. If you'll notice that all of the other knobs that stay the same, except we have a new knob on the screen. It's the transient accent. As most of you engineers know, even with fast attack times on gates, that some of the initial hit can sometimes get lost when the gate goes to open. So Midas added the accent knob. Basically what this does is if you turn the knob to the positive side, it's going to add a little bit of top end to kind of restore a bit of that attack that you would normally expect to find, like on, a tom or a snare or even a kick drum. Okay, so this kind of emphasizes and, kind of replaces maybe a little bit of that transient that may get cut off by the gate opening. Okay, as well with the accent knob is you can go the other way. You can kind of take away some of the transient attack and maybe get creative with some of the sounds that you might be looking for. Next, we have a ducker. Once again, all the same time constants you would expect to find on the ducker. Okay. Moving on below that, we have another filter section. As you can see here, I have the filter engaged and it's set to a frequency of 633 Hertz. And I have the width pretty narrow, so that way it hones in directly on what I need to have the snare opening properly. Again, the menu button is there, which is going to bring us into the patching screen. So let's go ahead and get back in. And next we have the listen button, which allows us to actually solo that and hear exactly and sweep around and to get the filter dialed in exactly how we need to. Below that, we have again the source button that will bring us into the patching screen to be able to key in anything for the trigger. Okay, and we also see to the left of that right now it's patched internally, so that way the input channel itself is being controlled by the gate. Next, we're in the EQ section. The console has 4 bands of fully parametric EQ. For the treble and the bass, we have 3 selectable shelf filters. So let's start here with the treble. Currently right now I have one of the shelves engaged, and we can go ahead and toggle through, which basically changes the shape of the filter as we bank through and then back into fully parametric. Okay, this adds different Midas EQ character styles that you were familiar with XL3, XL4, and Heritage Series consoles. The same also applies to the bass frequencies. We can go ahead and change between 3 different types of filter shapes. Next, we are in the master section. This here is where we can assign the channel to the stereo bus or the monitor bus. It allows us to pan left and right. We also see the indicators for the mute and solo. The B button that's on there, that basically, if we engage that, that will go ahead, and once we hit solo, it will solo that channel to monitor B on the console. By default, it's anytime you press the solo button, it goes to monitor A on the console. So that way, if you have your headphones plugged into the right side of the desk, once you hit the solo, you'll be able to hear it coming out of that headphone port. Or if you did not have that button engaged, then you would hear everything on the A bus. And we also see what channels are assigned to which VCA, as well as the pop groups and the position of the fader. Next, we come to the sends overview window. As you see, we have all 72 aux sends on here, as well as the 24 matrices. If you notice, channels 25 to 60, there's an on button. That's because those channels are actually assigned to groups, not aux sends. So this allows us to actually send channels to groups as well as the aux sends that you would typically expect to find in the sends view. Because there are such a high amount of channels, it could be kind of difficult to remember what exactly each and every single one of those sends are. So as you see, auxes 1 through 8 actually show all of the aux send names of where they're going to. This makes your life a lot easier. You could bank through in groups of 8, as you see on the screen, it's banking down that way, or you can go by individually and one at a time, and then you'll see that it keeps moving in banks of 8. Okay, then on the actual console surface here, we have the 8 encoder knobs. To the left of that, we have the button that will turn it on or off, as well as making that pre or post. If we were sending it to a group, so let's get down to group 25 here, we'll see that, we'll get down to group 27, which is my snare group. You'll see that that group is on, and now that it's off. Now, if you take a look at 61 to 72, you notice like on 61, 63, 65, 67, and so forth, there's colors with a little indicator in the middle. That's to denote a stereo send, okay? So let's go to aux send 61. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn 61 on. All right, so now if we look down at the console, we notice that the top knob will be our pan knob for the stereo send. And then that 62, which is the knob directly below it, that is the actual send level. So if you have stereo effects that you're going to be feeding, or if you're doing, say, monitors from front of house and you have that set for stereo in-ears, this is what's going to allow you to be able to pan certain sends, you know, to either side or up the middle, and then be able to adjust the levels. And there you have it for the aux sends overview.